A mature brown bear walks majestically through the forest, and beside him, with light and confident steps, walks a mature puma that was once a fragile cub he saved years ago. Two super predators who should be mortal rivals, sharing the same trail in perfect harmony. It all began years before, when a devastating hurricane transformed the Florida forests into a scene of destruction. In this chaos, the bear found an orphaned puma cub, trembling among fallen logs. Against all instinct, he decided to protect it. What happened next, until they grew up and became kings of their territories, is a story that defies the laws of nature and moves us with the sheer strength of a bond of friendship.
The sky suddenly darkened as the hurricane made landfall on the Florida coast. Winds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour toppled centuries-old pine trees as if they were matchsticks, and the rain fell so heavily it felt like a solid wall. Within hours, rivers overflowed, trails vanished, and the constant sound was the cracking of splintering tree trunks. An adult grizzly bear, familiar with every corner of that territory, was caught off guard by the storm's force. It scurried among the debris seeking shelter, its paws sinking into the mud.
When the wind finally died down, the silence was eerie. Fallen trees blocked the path, broken branches littered the ground, and the smell of damp earth mingled with that of fresh resin. The exhausted bear walked slowly, sniffing the air in search of food or a dry place. His muscles trembled from cold and fatigue, but his survival instinct kept him moving. He knew he needed to find a new safe haven before night fell. It was then that, amidst a pile of fallen logs, he heard a weak, desperate meow. The sound came from beneath a huge tree that had been uprooted. The bear stopped, ears perked up. Normally, that sound would simply mean easy prey, but something in the tone of that cry made him hesitate. He approached slowly, pushed the branches aside with his enormous paw, and saw a puma cub, no bigger than a large rabbit, trembling all over, its eyes still half closed and its soaked fur clinging to its body. The bear stood motionless for long seconds, staring at the small feline. The scent of a puma, even so young, was unmistakable. A competitor, a future threat, potential prey. Everything in its instinct screamed to turn back or quickly end the encounter. A lone cub wouldn't survive the night. Wolves, alligators, or even birds of prey would soon find it. Leaving it behind would be the most natural thing to do. Killing it would be even simpler. But the bear didn't move. The cub tried to stand, but its hind legs gave way and it fell again, letting out another hoarse meow of cold and hunger. Its mother had surely died in the storm. There were no traces of her nearby, only destruction. The bear lowered its enormous head and sniffed the trembling little body. The smell of fear was as strong as the scent of mother's milk that still lingered on the puma cub's snout. Something stirred within the bear's chest, a sensation it had never experienced. It wasn't hunger, it wasn't anger, it was something else. Without a second thought, he used his teeth with extreme care to seize the cub by the scruff of the neck, as a bear would with her own cub. The little puma struggled for a moment, but soon quieted down, too exhausted to resist. The bear carried it through the fallen logs to a natural hollow under a large rock, a shelter that the storm had not destroyed. Inside, he laid the cub on the dry ground and settled down beside it, covering it with his own warm, heavy body. The night arrived cold, but, for the first time since the hurricane, the little puma stopped shivering. Dawn brought an eerie silence, broken only by the dripping of water on the branches. The bear awoke first and felt the light weight of the cub still pressed against its chest. The puma cub slept soundly, its belly rising and falling in a calm rhythm. When it opened its green, frightened eyes, it tried to retreat, but the stone wall prevented it. The bear merely watched, without growling, without moving too quickly. Gradually, the cub understood that it would not be devoured, and curled up again against the giant's warm fur. Hunger soon set in. The bear left its den and returned an hour later with a large fish in its mouth, still struggling. It dropped it before the cub, which had never eaten anything but milk. The little one sniffed, recoiled, and meowed in confusion. Patiently, the bear tore the fish apart with its claws and pushed soft pieces close to its snout. After much hesitation, the puma cub licked, then chewed. In a few minutes, it devoured everything. The bear merely watched, licking its own paws. That day, it repeated the hunt 3 times. At night, when distant thunder heralded more rain, the cub approached alone and nestled between the bear's front paws. The big bear lowered its enormous head, sniffed the cub's nape, and let out a low snort, almost a purr. For the first time in its adult life, the bear did not sleep alone. The shelter, previously just a hole in the rock, began to smell of both, bear and puma, predator and prey, a mixture that no other animal in the forest would understand. Weeks passed, and the cub grew quickly. He could already walk without falling. His paws gained strength, and his eyes, once dull with fear, shone with curiosity. The bear took him on short walks around the area, teaching him without words. When they found a fallen log, the bear would scratch deeply with its claws, marking its territory. The cub imitated him, scratching with its still small nails, leaving fine marks just below the enormous ones. It was as if to say, "I am here too." Their first hunt together happened by chance. A rabbit flew out from between the bushes. The bear didn't even move, but the cub took off after it, clumsily stumbling over roots. He fell face first to the ground, and the rabbit ran away. He returned ashamed, ears drooping. The bear just snorted, caught another rabbit minutes later, and placed it at the cub's feet. They divided the prey. The bear ate most of it, but left the softer parts for his pupil. The next day, the cub managed to bring down a rat all by himself. He brought it proudly, dropping it at the bear's feet as if handing over a trophy. At night, they always slept close together. The cub no longer fit between the bear's front paws, so it curled up next to the bear's chest, its head resting on its furry belly. The big bear kept a heavy paw on the little one's back, as if it feared that it would disappear during its sleep. Neither of them could name what they felt, but both would stop any activity if the other moved too far away. The forest was slowly growing back, but that piece of land now belonged to 2. Summer arrived, hot and scorching, and the cub was no longer a cub. At almost a year old, its body was lengthening, its muscles were becoming defined beneath its golden fur, and its fangs were beginning to sprout. It ran faster than the bear, climbed tall trees in seconds, and disappeared among the branches before pouncing on a small deer with deadly precision. The bear watched from afar, proud but also uneasy. The puma no longer needed to be carried, nor protected from heavy rains. The distance between them grew, not by choice, but by nature. The bear continued to bring large prey to the den, but the puma now hunted alone and returned only at nightfall. He would arrive with his snout smeared with blood, throw a deer leg beside the bear, and lie down to lick his paws. They ate side by side, but no longer shared each morsel as before. The puma accepted the bear's offering, but also left his own prey, a gesture of reciprocity that no biology textbook could explain. They still slept together, but the puma occupied almost the same space as the bear.
And sometimes they would wake up with their heads touching, breathing the same warm air. One night, a strange adult puma invaded the territory. It growled loudly, arched its back, and lunged at the young puma. The bear appeared like thunder, rose on its hind legs, and let out a roar that made the ground tremble. The intruder immediately retreated and disappeared into the darkness. The young puma stood still, tail down, looking at the bear with something that seemed both gratitude and embarrassment. That night, it once again curled up against the giant's chest as in its early days, even though it was too big for it. The second winter was drier and brought scarcity. The deer migrated early, the fish disappeared from the streams, and competition for food intensified. The young puma, now almost 2 years old and at the peak of his strength, hunted increasingly distant territories. He returned to the den only every 3 days, then 5, then 10. When he appeared, he was thin, with new scratches on his snout and fresh scars on his back, marks of disputes with other males. The bear sniffed each wound, licked them carefully, and shared what he had managed to gather, even if it was little. One frosty morning, the puma didn't return. The bear waited all day at the entrance to the den, its snout resting on its front paws, watching the path where the other always appeared. Night fell, then dawn broke again. 3 days passed. The bear then went out to look for it. It traveled for miles, sniffing every stone, every marked tree. It found recent puma footprints mixed with deer blood, but the trail led north, towards the mountains where the big cats usually establish solitary dominion. The bear stopped at the last mark, snorted long and low, as if understanding that certain things cannot be forced. He returned to the shelter alone. For the first time in years, he ate all the prey without sharing. He slept curled up in the deepest corner of the cave, his body occupying the space that had previously been for 2. The forest continued its cycle. New shoots sprouted. Birds began to sing again. The bear resumed his old routine, but slower, quieter. Sometimes he would stop in the middle of the path and look back, as if expecting to see the golden shape emerge from among the trees. He never saw it again. 4 years passed. The bear became a silent legend in the forests of central Florida. Enormous, with old scars and graying fur on its back, no one dared to challenge its territory. It marked the trees with blows so deep they seemed to be made with an axe. It hunted alone, slept alone, forded rivers alone. Sometimes, at nightfall, it would climb a high hill and spend long minutes gazing at the horizon, the wind whipping against its snout. There was no name for longing, only an emptiness it carried like an old wound that no longer hurts, but also never heals. The puma, now a fully grown 7-year-old, dominated the rocky hills to the north. His territory was smaller than the bear's, but no one ever entered and left unscathed. Quick as lightning, he scaled cliffs where deer sought refuge and brought them down with a single leap. His short, dry roar echoed through throats and made even the alligators cower in the water. He marked the rocks with strong urine and perfect parallel scratches. No other male approached. He was absolute king. But he was also alone. Sometimes he would stop atop a rock, look south, and remain motionless until the sun set. The forest had fully recovered from the hurricane. New trees stood tall, thick vines covered the fallen trunks of the past, and flocks of wild turkeys roamed the clearings. The 2 predators followed parallel paths, separated by dozens of kilometers, each master of its own world. Neither sought the other. There was no apparent reason. Life went on its natural course, as it always had. One spring afternoon, the bear descended into the valley in search of fish swimming upstream to spawn.
The path led him along an ancient, almost forgotten trail, covered in new leaves. The scent of fresh water filled the air when he sensed something different. A strong, familiar odor mixed with that of fresh deer blood. He stopped immediately. His ears perked up. The wind carried the scent again, now closer. It was him.
On the other side of the stream, among the oak trees, the puma appeared. Long, muscular body, tail swinging low, yellow eyes fixed on the bear. For a second, the two studied each other like strangers. The puma advanced slowly, ears slightly back, but without growling. The bear remained standing, its front paws planted on the damp ground. No sound but the gurgling of the water. Then the puma lowered its head and sniffed the air exactly as it did when it was small. Snout raised, nostrils dilated, recognizing. The bear took a step forward. The puma took another. When they were 3 meters apart, the feline rubbed the side of its face against the bear's enormous shoulder, marking it with its glands, just as it had done years before to say, "You are mine." The bear responded with a deep snort, lowered its head, and gently pressed its snout against the puma's neck. There was no dispute, no fear, no surprise, just recognition. They remained like that for long minutes, sniffing each other, touching snouts, as if time had simply stopped for 4 years and was now starting to move again. The bear and the puma walked side by side along the ancient trail, as shown in the photo that went around the world. The bear in front, with a heavy, firm step. The puma to the right, its body elegant and silent. They stopped together at the same stream to drink, fished the same school of fish, and shared the same deer they had killed at the edge of the clearing. When night fell, they lay down under the same giant oak tree, shoulder to shoulder, just as they did when one was a giant and the other still fit between its paws. There was no territorial dispute, no warning roars. Just 2 kings who, by pure chance of being in the right place at the right time, carried the same memory in their hearts. Years of solitude did not erase the bond. Nature, which separates offspring from adoptive parents and pushes each species down its solitary path, failed this time. What began with a trembling cub amidst the wreckage transformed into the strongest proof that empathy can be born where it is least expected, between prey and claws, between rivals who should never touch. They didn't need each other to survive. They chose to need each other to live. Today, those who cross those woods sometimes see the marks. Deep bear scratches and perfect parallel puma lines on the same tree, side by side. 2 superpredators who, against all the laws of the jungle, decided that some bonds are worth more than any territory. And they continued together as far as the forest would allow them. If you enjoyed the story, please like it, subscribe to the channel to help me bring you more stories, and turn on notifications. Comment what you thought and leave tips and suggestions in the comments. Keep watching the other videos.